Okay, let's unpack this. Picture this scene. It's a big night at the Kennedy Center in D.C.
Right, the iconic venue.
Everyone's dressed up, ready for a Les Miserables,
Big
musical.
absolute legendary show.
buzz in the air.
The lights go down, orchestra's tuning up, and then the president and first lady arrive. They head for the presidential box.
And what happens right then?
Well, according to the reports we've been looking through, the reaction wasn't exactly quite anticipation.
No. What did the sources say?
An immediate mix. Loud boos, apparently, clear as day,
Wow. Okay.
but also cheers mixed in. And some reports say people were chanting USA.
So a really divided vocal reaction, not subtle.
Not subtle at all. And that specific moment, that, very public, very mixed welcome,
Huh.
that's really our jumping off point for this DRM News global discussion.
The visual is really striking, isn't it? Tells you straight away there's more going on than just a night at the theater.
Exactly. We've gathered quite a few sources, different reports, excerpts, all detailing this event and the stuff surrounding it. And this moment kind of gives us a lens, doesn't it, to look at the broader dynamics the sources describe.
That's the plan. Our mission today, using this material, is to explore what actually happened, dig into the context the sources offer for why it might have happened like that.
And sort of understand the significance maybe of this intersection between politics and, well, a major cultural place.
Right. So let's get into the details from these reports. They really paint a picture of this reaction as Trump arrived for Les Mis.
The boos, the cheers, the USA chants you mentioned, it sounds like it was pretty loud, pretty immediate, not just a few people.
Spread through a good part of the audience is the impression given.
And it's probably worth noting, some reports pointed out this wasn't like the very first time this administration had faced maybe a less than warm welcome there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Vice President J.D. Vance and the Second Lady Usha Vance reportedly got some boos themselves at a concert just a few months prior, back in March.
Ah, okay. So maybe some existing tension or willingness in the audience to express political feelings there already.
Could be. But here's where the reports suggest things get really interesting, connecting directly to more recent events just before this Les Mis night.
Okay.
This mixed reception happened during President Trump's first visit to a show there, since he'd taken some pretty significant actions regarding the Kennedy Center's leadership.
Right. That context feels crucial, and the sources definitely detail it. They report that back in February, so just a few months before this performance,
Yeah.
President Trump appointed himself chairman of the Kennedy Center.
Himself? Wow.
And this was reportedly after he had fired many members of the existing board.
Right. And the reports also mention Richard Grenell, described as Trump's envoy for special missions. He was brought in as the center's new president.
So a total overhaul at the very top. New
Yeah.
chairman, new president,
Yeah.
happening pretty recently before this very public appearance.
Exactly. And that kind of leadership change, it naturally makes you ask about the reasons behind it, and the sources do touch on that.
What do they suggest?
Well, they describe these moves as reportedly part of maybe a broader effort by the administration in its second term to exert more control, perhaps, over high-profile institutions.
Not just in culture.
No, across different sectors. They cited examples like education and science, too.
And the reports actually include statements attributed to President Trump himself,
Oh, yeah.
where he reportedly complained about what he saw as, quote, woke programming, and even specifically mentioned drag shows supposedly happening at the Kennedy Center.
So the information presented suggests a political administration taking pretty direct action on the governance of a big cultural institution.
And expressing specific worries about the kind of content it presents.
Yeah. And then the sources go on to describe some of the reported sort of fallout from these changes, consequences.
Yes, according to figures cited in some reports, and this was based on information from people reportedly briefed on internal data, it sounds like there was a pretty significant impact.
Like what?
Well, Hamilton, for instance, hugely popular show, reportedly canceled plans to appear at the Kennedy Center after these changes.
Wow, losing Hamilton is big.
Huge.
Yeah.
And there were also reports of staff, leaving their jobs at the center.
Okay. Staff turnover, too.
And maybe most strikingly, the reports highlighted impacts on sales figures. Reuters had figures suggesting a noticeable drop, both subscription sales and individual tickets.
How noticeable.
Well, the numbers cited were pretty stark. Overall, year-on-year subscription revenue for the upcoming season reportedly down 36% to $2.8 million as of early June.
36% down is significant for overall subscriptions.
But they also drilled down specifically into theater subscriptions, which
Oh.
are usually, a really core revenue stream for places like this.
Yeah.
Those were reported down by, wait for it, 82%.
82. Wow, that number really jumps out. That's a massive drop reported for theater subs.
It really does. But what's interesting here is the sources don't just, throw that number out there. They also include the Kennedy Center's side of the story, their explanation.
Ah, okay, so a counter perspective.
Exactly. A Kennedy Center official, Kim Cooper, Senior VP of Marketing, her statement is included. And she suggested those comparisons weren't really accurate or telling the full story yet.
How so? What was her reasoning?
Well, her statement reportedly explained that the comparison was kind of skewed because they'd launched their subscription renewal campaign later in 2025 than they did in 2024.
Ah, so the timing was different, implying it was maybe too early to judge the final numbers from that snapshot.
That seems to be the implication.
Hmm.
And she also reportedly noted they'd recently launched a new, more flexible subscription option, like a mix and match kind of thing across different genres.
Okay, which could definitely affect how the numbers track compared to older models. Makes sense.
Right. And her statement also mentioned more show announcements were still coming, which could obviously impact future sales.
So the reports give us both sides. The picture of a potentially big decline and the institution's detailed reasons why those specific early numbers might be misleading.
Yeah, this back and forth really highlights the complexity, doesn't it? Even something like sales figures can be interpreted differently depending on context and who's presenting them.
Absolutely. And the sources are clear. These cultural institutions, they rely heavily on ticket revenue, subscriptions, and crucially, donations.
And speaking of donations, the reports add another really significant layer to this specific Les Mis evening.
Oh yeah, what's that?
While you had that mixed reaction happening in the hall, President Trump himself told reporters on the red carpet that the event was also a fundraiser for the Kennedy Center.
A fundraiser. Okay, successful.
He reportedly said it had raised a lot of money, over $10 million, from just that one night.
Wow, over $10 million in one evening. That's a huge amount. How did that work?
The sources detailed it. Apparently, donors could contribute up to $2 million to attend this opening night.
For $2 million, what did they get?
Access to a special reception, premier seats for the show, naturally, and a photo op with the president and first lady.
I see. So a high-dollar fundraising component built right into the event.
Exactly. So the sources paint this picture where, yeah, you've got reports of falling subscriptions and this very mixed audience reaction inside.
But on the other hand, you have what sounds like a hugely successful fundraising effort tied to the same event, bringing in significant money, at least according to the president's statement.
Right. And the reports also included his comments about the building itself, the physical Kennedy Center.
What did he say about it?
He was quoted saying something like, "We want to bring it back better than ever," and mentioned it needing a little help from the standpoint of age and fitness, but that it was going to be fantastic.
Well, the building did open back in 1971, so it's definitely got some history. Possibly needs updates, as he suggested.
And that perspective kind of lines up with a statement included from a White House spokeswoman, Anna Kelly.
Okay, what did she add?
She was quoted saying, "President Trump cares deeply about American arts and culture, and that his actions were aimed at revitalizing historic institutions like the Kennedy Center to their former greatness."
So framing those leadership changes and the focus on the center as being about restoration or improvement.
That seems to be the framing presented, and the sources add just one final piece of context to this particular Les Mis performance that feels, well, pretty significant.
What's that?
This whole event took place just days after President Trump had reportedly sent U.S. Marines and the National Guard to deal with protests in Los Angeles.
Protests against what?
Against his administration's immigration raids happening there.
Okay. And the connection.
Well, the really striking point, which the reports are careful to highlight, is the show itself. Les Miserables.
Right, which is about...
It's a world-famous musical fundamentally about citizens rising up against a harsh government. Revolution in 19th century France. That's the core story.
Wow. So the president attending a show with that specific theme.
Right after deploying military force against protesters.
At a major cultural institution whose leadership he'd just controversially changed.
While getting a very public mixed reaction from the audience inside.
And while protests related to his policies were happening elsewhere. That's quite a convergence of elements as the sources lay it out.
It really is. It feels like it encapsulates a specific moment where, political actions on institutions, public feeling expressed right there in a cultural space, and even the themes of the art itself all just collided very publicly, according to these reports.
Absolutely. A very charged moment described in the sources.
Okay, let's try and bring this all together now, sticking just to what these sources have told us. This DRM News global discussion has really focused on one event. President Trump at Les Mis at the Kennedy Center.
We looked at that immediate, very public, mixed reaction he got, walking in the booze, the cheers, the chants, all reported as quite audible.
And we explored the context the reports provide. Those recent leadership changes he made. Appointing himself chairman, Grinnell as president, the reported board firings just months earlier.
Then we examined the reported consequences. Hamilton pulling out, staff leaving, and that significant reported drop in subscription sales, especially that dramatic 82% figure for theater subs.
But crucially, we also included the Kennedy Center's response, their counterstatement from the reports, explaining why those early numbers might be misleading the timing of the campaign, the new subscription models.
And we noted the event wasn't just a show, it was reportedly also a major fundraiser, bringing in potentially over $10 million that night, alongside the president's comments on fixing up the building and the administration's stated goal of revitalization.
And finally, we touched on that broader context from the sources. The administration's reported focus on influencing cultural institutions, concerns about programming.
And the specific, maybe ironic timing of attending Les Mis with its themes of uprising so soon after the reported quelling of protests elsewhere.
This one event, as detailed across these different sources, it really does offer a fascinating glimpse, doesn't it, into how political actions around cultural institutions can intersect directly with public performance spaces.
Sparking strong reactions, very public ones, and raising big questions about the role, maybe the perceived independence, of places like the Kennedy Center in today's political climate.
So, thinking only about the details and the different perspectives presented in these specific sources we've discussed, the sounds from the audience, the leadership changes reported, those stark subscription figures versus the official explanation, and the themes of Les Miserables playing out on stage that night. What do you think this whole episode suggests about the role cultural venues play, or maybe are increasingly forced to play, in a really divided and politically charged America right now?
Yeah, that's definitely something worth considering as you reflect on these events.